In Module 3, I will be discussing our admissions process. Some of the topics that I'll be covering are new patient admissions process, benefits and eligibility, the intake process, and also patient sign-in protocols. So in this slide, I sort of summarized what the steps are to admit a new patient is. Just to make it a little bit easier for you because it does take quite a couple steps. It does take a lot of practice. The first thing you want to do is obtain insurance information. You want to make sure you check for benefits and eligibility of that insurance. Schedule the patient and input it into their office. Have patient fill out the intake during the evaluation appointment. Always double check the information you have and make sure everything is correct in the system. Collect copayment if they have one. And always schedule patient for recurring appointments. Once all of these things are done, make sure that everything is scanned into the patient's file. So benefits and eligibility, how to check insurance benefits. So there's different ways that you can check for insurance benefits. People who already have a background in insurance and checking insurance benefits will understand this a little bit better. Those who have no idea how to do these things, it will take some time before you understand it. There's a lot of terms that you need to learn, and there's always new things going on with insurances. So there's different ways that you can check for insurance benefits. One way is through online portals depending on the insurance. You can also call the provider number that's usually located on the back of the insurance card, or you can even find it online. And their office also has a way that you can check for insurance benefits, which I will expand on later. In order to check insurance benefits, you need the member ID number on the front of the card. You also need the name of the patient and the date of birth. And when you are checking for insurance benefits, make sure that you have your tax ID or MPI number ready. Keep in mind that the MPI and tax ID numbers are different for PT Now Holdings and PT Now. Always ask to speak to a representative if you are calling, and tell them that you are calling for benefits and eligibility for a patient for physical therapy. Because if not, they're just going to give you benefits for regular medical, and what you want is specifically for physical therapy, it can be different. So checking benefits in their office. To be able to check for benefits in their office, you have to set this up yourself. Their office uses a company called Zirmed, so you would have to create an account with Zirmed. So you can search them up online on Zirmed.com. You set up an account with them, and they work together with their office so that you're able to check for benefits in the software. And the great thing about this is that when you are checking for benefits in the software, it automatically populates the deductible, the co-payments, all the information that you need to know when it comes to checking for benefits. It would automatically populate in their office, and it'll also save into the patient's case, so it makes your life a lot easier. So terms to know. When it comes to benefits and eligibility, there's a lot of terms that you need to become familiar with. And it's going to take some time before you can actually use them interchangeably. You'll have to use it a couple times and practice before you can actually understand what they really mean. The first thing that you need to know is what a deductible is. So a deductible is a dollar amount your health insurer may require you to pay out of pocket each year before your health plan begins to pay for covered medical expenses. So if a patient has a deductible, let's say of $1,000, that means that they have to pay out of their pocket a total of $1,000 before the insurance even kicks in and begins to pay. Co-payments is the next thing you need to know. A co-payment is a fixed payment for a covered medical service. So every time the patient comes in, they are required to pay a co-payment, and that co-payment is after they've already met their deductible. So before the patient meets the deductible, they have to pay out of their pocket the whatever amount the deductible is. Then the patient can have a co-payment, and then once their deductible is met, now they're responsible for whatever their co-payment is. The other thing that they might have is co-insurance. Now, a patient is not going to have a co-payment and a co-insurance at the same time. They're either going to have either or. So co-payment versus co-insurance. They sound similar, but they're not the same thing. So a co-payment is a fixed amount, but a co-insurance is a percentage of the remaining costs that the patient is responsible for once they've already met their deductible. So once a patient meets their deductible, whatever percentage their co-insurance is, that's how much they have to pay out of whatever is billed, out of the billed amount, and the rest gets covered by the insurance. Out-of-pocket max. So an out-of-pocket max is the most a patient will have to pay for a covered medical expense in a plan year through deductible and coinsurance before the insurance plan begins to pay 100%. So once the patient reaches their deductible, like I said before, let's pretend it's $1,000. They meet their deductible. Now let's say they have a copayment of $30. So now they have to pay $30, $30, $30 until they reach their out-of-pocket max. Once they reach their out-of-pocket max and their deductible, now their insurance will pay 100%. Prior authorization. So some insurances you are going to need prior authorization before you can begin seeing the patient. And basically this is just the insurance deciding whether or not they're going to allow you to see this patient and treat this patient if they think it's medically necessary. So sometimes you have to wait for that authorization before you can even schedule the patient to begin their treatments. So in-network versus out-of-network. This is something that you definitely have to know from the moment you start checking for insurance benefits, because you want to know whether the insurance is in-network or out-of-network with you. The difference is that if you are in-network with that insurance, that means that as a provider you have a contracted rate with that insurance. So that means you have some kind of contract with that insurance making you in-network. Now if you're out-of-network, that means you have not yet done a contract with that insurance. So most of the time if a patient's out-of-network, usually with you, then usually their deductible is higher and their co-payments are higher than if they were in network with you. Because then if you're in network, you would have some kind of negotiated rates. That means your rates will be lower. So you definitely want to make sure whether you're checking for in-network or out-of-network benefits. Some patients will have insurances that have both in-network and out-of-network benefits, so you can kind of work with either or. And some patients will only have in-network benefits. So you have to make sure you choose the correct one. So here I put an example just to kind of explain to you a little bit better. So let's say you have a policy with 20% coinsurance. That means the insurance company is going to pay 80% of covered services after your deductible has been met. So once you meet your deductible, that means you're responsible for 20% of the billed amount and your insurance pays 80%, which is the rest. But you won't have to pay that 20% forever. You pay until you reach your out-of-pocket max. Maybe your out-of-pocket max is $6,000, depending on your insurance plan. Then the insurance will cover the rest of the qualifying medical expenses for that calendar year. Another example. So let's say you have a $30 copayment and an annual deductible of $1,000. Now keep that in mind, an annual deductible of $1,000. That means that every year that $1,000 deductible or out-of-pocket will restart in the new year. So in your office, you want to make sure that in the beginning of the new year, whatever active patients you do have, you want to check for benefits and eligibility again, because that deductible might have started all over again. So some of the patients that are only paying their co-payment or their co-insurance might have to pay the full amount, which is until they reach their deductible once again for the new year. So let's say you have already met that deductible of $1,000. So as a patient, you're responsible to pay $30, right? Because that's your copayment every visit, and the insurance will cover the rest until you meet your out-of-pocket max. And let's say in this example, it's $2,500. After you meet the out-of-pocket max, then your insurance will pay each visit fully, and you will no longer have a copayment because now your insurance will pay 100% of the visits. So here I just put more like an illustration for those of you who are a little bit more visual. It's the same type of examples, just breaks it up. You can see an example too. Let's say you have a co-insurance of 25%. So for, let's say you have a surgery of $10,000, you're going to pay $2,500, which is your 25% co-insurance, and the plan, which is your insurance, will pay the 75% that's left, which will be $7,500. So you can just use this as more of a visual, just so you can kind of understand it a little bit better. So here I put two examples for two fake patients, just so you can test yourself. Read each patient, what kind of insurance they have, what their deductible is, their copayment is, and their out-of-pocket is, and see if you can answer the questions on the bottom to see if you really understand the terms. Feel free to pause the video, and then we will review the answers. Okay, so I've expected for you to try the examples. So the first example, the patient has a deductible of $1,000, a copayment of $25, and an out-of-pocket max of $2,500. So what is the patient's copay if the deductible was not met? So if they have not met their deductible of $1,000, that means they have to pay out of their pocket $1,000 before their insurance even starts to kick in. So in our case, we usually charge $50 per visit. So the patient would have to pay $50 every time until they meet $1,000. So it's $50 out of their pocket every time until they meet a total of $1,000. So what happens once they meet that $1,000 deductible? Now their copayment is now their payments are whatever their copay is. In his case, it's $25. So once he meets the deductible of $1,000, now his copay is going to be $25 instead of the $50 that we were originally charging. And then what happens once their deductible and the out-of-pocket of $2,500 is met? $0. So that means that the insurance is going to pay 100%. So in essence, they'll pay out of their pocket $1,000 of the deductible. Once they meet that deductible, now they're going to pay whatever their copayment is, and they're going to pay their copay $25 each time until they meet $2,500, and now their insurance pays 100%. In example 2, it's similar situation. The only difference is that we're not dealing with a fixed amount of a copay. Now we're dealing with a co-insurance, which is 20%. So the deductible in this example is $2,000, a co-insurance of 20%, and an out-of-pocket max of $3,500. So what is the patient's copay if the deductible was not met? So in this case, it's $2,000. If the patient has not met those $2,000, that means they have to pay out of their pocket $2,000 before their insurance kicks in. So they're going to be charged the full amount until they reach that $2,000 deductible. So once that patient reaches that $2,000 deductible, now the patient is responsible for 20% of the billed amount. So let's say it's, to make the math easy, it's out of 100%. Say it's $100. The patient will pay $20 and the insurance will pay the rest, which is $80. And they're going to keep paying that until they reach their out-of-pocket max. In this case, it's $3,500. Once they meet their out-of-pocket max of $3,500, so that means they got to pay the 20% every single time until they meet $3,500. Now their insurance will pay 100% and their copayment is $0. So here I just kind of summarize some of the questions that you would want to ask when you are verifying insurance. So you first want to know whether they're in-network or out-of-network benefits. You want to know if they have a deductible. Has the deductible been met? Is there a co-payment or a co-insurance? Is pre-authorization needed? Is there an annual limit of visits? Some insurances only allow a certain amount per year of total therapy visits. And also, is there a limit on amount of units billed? Some insurances only allow a certain amount of units to be billed at a time. So let's pretend there's some insurances will only allow you to bill 4 units, so that's all you can bill. So you want to make sure that you really understand what the boundaries are with some of these insurances. The intake process. Slow down this process. The intake process is very important. We separate it into, we make it into a two-step process, and the reason why we call it a two-step process is because first you obtain information before you see the patient, and then you obtain even more information after the patient arrives to the appointment. So you might get some information from, let's say, the patient when they call you, or from whoever's referring the patient to you, and they're limited in the amount of information they can give you. But then the rest of the information you can obtain from the patient when they arrive. Make sure the intake forms are completed. Make copies of their license, their insurance cards, and any other record the patient brings. Request prior records if needed. Make sure you explain everything to the patient during the intake process. Make sure you explain to them what forms they're signing, what to expect in their treatment. Call insurance, doctors, attorneys if you're missing any information. And all this is so that you can avoid mistakes. Patient sign-in. So when a patient evaluation is completed by the physical therapist, the evaluation and the sign-in sheet, which is the sign-in sheet is part of the intake, will be placed together in a large binder with tabs to organize the active patients by alphabetical order. Every day you will have a clipboard with a sign-in sheet and a date where patient will print their full name. This sheet will be replaced with a new one every day, and the signed one gets placed in a binder with the months of the year tabs. So you're going to have 2 binders. One that's going to have the tabs in for alphabetical order, where you're going to keep the patient's personal sign-in sheet that they fill out during the intake, as well as the evaluation, which is the plan of care that the therapist writes for that first visit. And you're going to put that together in that binder in in alphabetical order by their last name. And then the other binder you're going to have with the months of the year tab. And in that binder, what you're going to put is the sign-in sheet that you have out on the clipboard where patients sign in. So it's like the daily sign-in sheets. So then you would look for their personal sign-in sheet in the binder so that they can put the date and sign next to it. So every time the patient comes in, you're going to give them the binder, you're going to look up their name in the binder and give it to them so that they can sign and date next to, in their sign-in sheet. That way they can keep track of how many times they're coming in. And it's important for you to keep these sign-in sheets away from the patient's view due to HIPAA compliance. So you don't want the patient to be, going through the entire binder, because then they're really looking through, they're going to be able to see other patients' personal information, and that would be against HIPAA compliance. And lastly, what you want to do is check in patient in their office schedule. And that is the end of Module 3.